Hello everyone and welcome back to Don't Fret and this part 3 of the 3-part series of defining your values. And so far in part 1 we've managed to get our huge set of values narrowed down to our top 20, and then in part 2 we took those 20 and narrowed them down to our best fit 10. And if you do the homework in this part 3, we'll have our final set of 3 to 5 core values. So let's get started. So by now, if you've done part 1 and part 2, and quick side note, if you've not done part 1 and part 2, do not carry on here. The part 1 and part 2 are going to be linked in the description below, so go back and do those first. But if you did do part 1 and part 2, you've got an idea of what we're going to do here, right? We're going to take the 10 and narrowed it down to our 3 to 5 core values. However, I have a small piece of guidance that I would like to offer you just before we do. And the first is what your values can represent. Now, if you've worked for a company that has defined core values, you'll know that they're generally a subset of values that are felt by the organization, i.e. the culture dictates the core values of the company, right? So if the company values, say, creativity or innovation, it comes from having a culture of innovation. Because if you do it the other way around and you set innovation as one of the core values, but it doesn't exist within the culture of an organization, that creates dissonance and the employees don't feel the connection to the values because they're not living it day by day. Now, it doesn't work the same with our personal values. It is perfectly okay to have aspirational core values. Because you remember the analogy I made in part 1 about the GPS and the roadmap. It's about understanding where you want to get to and using your core values to navigate the roads along the way and the different paths that you might take. But knowing that the destination is a future idea and that you're enjoying the journey, that you're on the journey, so that every decision that you make along that journey is connected to your core values. So they can be aspirational. You can start to build them into your daily habits, your daily practices. It only becomes an issue if you've got one of the core values that you do not decide to live every day. Your decision making actually veers away from your core values, because that's where unhappiness lies. And that happens across the board, whether it's a core value which is true to you or not. If you start making decisions that veer you away from those core values, that is where unhappiness, that's where the dissonance is when your behaviors don't match the core values that you've set. So that's tip number 1, is you can 100% pick aspirational values as long as you put the behaviors and practices in place so that you get to experience those values. Otherwise, it's dissonance. A recommendation 2 is it's okay to change the words. Right? There are millions of words in the English language that we can use. There are so many, we are spoilt for choice. And I put a list of core values to choose from, a database of core values on a sheet for you to choose from to get this far. But one of the words or the phrases may not be 100% resonant with you, right? So it might be close. It might be like a 85, 90%, but it's just not quite worded in the right way for you. So you can change the tense, you can change the type of word that you're going to use, which may just veer you off in a slightly different direction that's going to be more and more resonant to who you feel you are. So it's really, really okay at this stage to change the words that you use to represent the kind of overall concept or theme. And let me give you an example for that, because I feel that's quite a tricky one to explain. So my core values are adventure, the quest, friendships, and magic. I have a fifth one, which is a sub one of minimalism, but it doesn't quite hit my top 4. So it's kind of like a substitute, a part-time player. But it's very relevant in my life. It's not quite as important as those first 4. But you'll notice that some of those aren't on there. Like the quest, for example, isn't on there. But you'll notice that meaningful work was. But I'm a huge fantasy nerd, right? I mentioned before in part 2, I think it was, I talked about reading the book Ravenheart, and I fell in love with the author David Gemmell. And I don't know if you've ever had an author that you love that much. You just like every single book is released, you're like, oh my God, this is the best book ever. Then you put that down and then you pick the next one. Oh my God, this one's so much better than that one. This is amazing. And each one had amazing characters. So I've got really, really into this whole kind of fantasy, going on a quest with your friends, going on adventures and stuff like that. And adventure for me is just that kind of idea of just being outside and trying something new, and it kind of embraces my growth mindset, but it's kind of understanding that everything I do in life has the opportunity to be an adventure. Every uncertainty, every fear is in part an adventure. Every time you try something new, it's an adventure. So it's a really good way of reframing that kind of growth mindset instead of just putting growth mindset. But meaningful work also, that feeling of having purpose, and that like what you do is contributing to the lives of others, is really, really important to me. But meaningful work itself sounded a bit empty. So the quest, the idea of a group of adventurers, which ties into the friendship model as well, right? Then go on a meaningful quest, which has adventure and magic. Magic is my curiosity. That is the ability to see, no matter where you are, you don't need to be on the top of a mountain to experience the grandeur of magic. You can find it in every circumstance, in every little delicate thing that you might come across, right? So that reframes my mind to be able to see the magic in so many different things. And those are my 4 core values. So I've changed concepts that I've outlined just to make it more resonant for me. And that's okay for you to do that as well. So let's get down to it, right? The final part of the journey is to narrow down your 10 to your top 3 to 5. Don't have any more than 5. It's actually recommended that you pick a core 3. But, you know, for you, it might be your first time. And I realize that kind of cutting others off might be difficult. You know, I had a top 6 for ages until I started whittling it down. And now I've managed to get it down to a top 4, and I feel like I don't need to touch them. Those are very much intrinsic values to me now. So narrow down your best 3 to 5. Drop it down in the comments below. I would love, love, love to hear what you've come up with, what you've defined. Even if you've done this before, I would love to hear it. So like the video, comment what your values are, hit the bell, subscribe, all of the kind of good things. And I'll see you for, well, back to normal tomorrow. Bye.